Hey everybody, it's FrSky Steve back with another quick tip video. This one is on a canned mix, or something we call the mixer library. This one is about something called the Flaps Elevator Mix, and I'm going to show you why you need it, describe to you why you need it, how to set it up, and you're going to be oh so happy, and your landings are going to be so much better in the future, and you'll be thanking me. Every time you land, you're going to say, hey, thanks FrSky Steve, and I'll be like, right back at you, bud. All right, so let's talk about your flaps first of all. I hit the model, I go into mixes, I got my flaps set up. If I long press on this, I go right into the edit, and I am looking right here. Look at that, I got 15% and I got 60%. So this is a takeoff flap for me, and this is a landing flap. And there's a reason why I'm pointing that out. I have my inputs on switch A, and I created a custom curve. This is what the curve looks like. It's a non-linear curve. And then I have these other things right here called slow up and slow down. And the best way to think about them is that they're exactly opposite. So up is down and down is up. So slow up means the amount of time it takes for the flaps to come down, and slow down is the amount of time for the flaps to come up. Okay, and it's on 2 channels, the flaps. I got weights at 100%. And what I can do is I can show you examples of this. So this is the flaps coming down to 15%. Since it doesn't go very far, it's very quick. The 60% takes a while longer. And what I've estimated that, just off the top of my head, that 60% of 4 seconds, somewhere 50% is 2 seconds, so 60% must be somewhere around 2.5, 2 3/4, somewhere around there, seconds. And that's if I were to go all the way from 0 to 60%. And that's the amount of time it would take for the flaps to come down. I'm fine with all of that. Okay, so the thing is that you're probably already thinking in your head, well, Steve, I got a solution. Why don't we just set up a flight mode? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my plane up and wait for the flaps to come down, and then I'm going to set the trim so that the plane doesn't gain altitude. Then it should be good, right? And then I'm going to say, yeah, but no. And the reason why no is because when you get that set up finally, let's say it's 10%. First thing that's going to happen is when you get into that flight mode, the flaps are going to drop 10%. And then it's going to take 2.5 seconds for the flaps to come down. So the very first thing the plane's going to want to do is crash into the ground before the flaps completely come down. That's not really a lot of fun. I don't like seeing you bring your plane home in pieces, so let's figure out a better solution. And the better solution is to get out of this altogether. And I just click on this once. Let me show you. It's the same thing as hitting this plus icon right here. Just click on it once, go to add. I get into the mixes library, and I find this thing called Flaps Elevator. I put it in the last position. So right away, it's going to start thinking about stuff. So the first thing it's going to do is the active condition is always on, which means whenever I hit the flaps, whatever I'm about to set up will work. And we're going to come back to that because that could be a problem. So the input, I know you're thinking, why don't we just use switch A? Because we already got set up in the flaps. Pretty easy, right? No, the problem with that is the same thing as setting up the flight modes. You're going to sit there and you're going to have these elevator come down very quickly, and you're going to be bummed out. What we want to do is we want to go to channels, and I want to use flaps. So I'm going to use channel 6 for flap 1 as my input, because it's going to mimic the amount of travel, the speed in which the flaps come down. Whichever speed the flaps come down, the elevator will come down as well. So you want the elevator to come down as the flaps come down. Otherwise, if you do the opposite, if they come up, you're going to be gaining even more altitude. So instead of ballooning, you're going to be super ballooning. All right, so we got that. And by default, the weight is at 10%. Now, I say you should start off there. What that means is that on my landing flap, if my elevator my flaps come down 60%. It should be about 10% of that is about 6%. And you're like, well, that's not very much. For an elevator, that's a lot. And depending on the plane, that might be too much. And you might even want to consider taking it down to 8%. The first thing I would do is, when I'm testing this, is I would take it about 3 mistakes high, flip the thing on, see if the plane balloons, see if it heads towards the ground, and change your weights. You want to change them in small increments. If it's still ballooning, what I would do is go to 12%. I would not do anything aggressive. But in this situation, for demonstration purposes only, I'm going to take it up to 30% so you have an easier time watching the travel of this. All right. And so we have everything set up. We're still uncertain about this always on. We'll talk about that in a moment. Now, here's a little quick tip for you as well. If I long press on display, I can go right to channels. So as I press A, you can see that it's retracted. Now you can see that the elevator is moving the same direction. It's 4.5% of the 15%, because it's 30, so it should be like about 20, yeah, 18 to 20% right there of the 60%. And that you can see the elevator moving, going, retracting, going in, going out. The reality is that we want to get out of the, and we want to change this back to 10%. So this is what it really should look like. Hit display. And you can see it's 1.5% of 15%, and this one is 6% or 5.9%. Thank you for being so damn precise, of 60%. And I'd start off with that. Now, the other issue is that when we set up the curve, I'm going to take you back to the curve really quick and show you that the flaps were at 15% for takeoff flaps and 60% for landing flaps. So if the active condition is always on, what that means is that when I want to take off, first thing that's going to happen is it's going to drop the elevator. And a plane that wants to come down is not really a great thing to have go up. So you probably don't want to have this working on the takeoff flaps if you do use takeoff flaps. So what we're going to do is we're going to get back into the flap elevator mix, and we're going to look at this always on, and I'm going to switch that to a switch position. What I want is switch A all the way down, and that means that this is only going to work when I have it at 60% flaps in my particular example. And there you go. So what happens is that when it's there, it works. When it's not, in the other two positions, it doesn't work. So that's how that whole situation comes together. And with that, we're done with another quick tip video. If you have questions, please feel free to leave them in the comments. Thank you for watching.